You know, that moment when you get into a trade or you've decided you're going to take a trade and you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no feedback from the market. You're in the trade or you're just about to execute the trade. I think embracing that feeling of the unknown is really a good idea.
Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders podcast.
Welcome back to Two Traders. It's Walter here. Hello, Darren.
Evening, Walter.
So we're going to talk about traders and the issues that some traders have with execution. I have to say that I think all of us have these issues, but where do these issues come from, Darren? Where do these execution problems, if you can call them that, where do they come from?
I suppose ego's probably in there, isn't it? Fear's definitely going to be in there, and greed's going to be in there. I think in trading we kind of suffer from those emotions more than in a lot of uncertain endeavours. But I think really, you know, we want to be right, don't we? It's that loss aversion before we've even entered the trade, and I think we often get ourselves set up with the wrong mindset, and you know we may well know that we're going to have losing trades, but and you know we may have like a lot of experience of trading and having losing trades, but it's still very hard to deal with losses. I think loss aversion is one of the biggest problems for traders, and I think, you know, the best way to deal with it is to accept that it exists, and perhaps journaling about your losses and seeing them for what they are, and you know, seeing that they're not really significant in the long run helps you to deal with it.
Yeah, I think the recency effect probably comes into play. So when you have something that happens to you, maybe you've had 4, 5, 6, 7 losses in a row, that may change your outlook and how you approach trading your system. Maybe you're not going to execute simply because you think something's wrong, that you're not doing what you should be doing because you've had 7 losers in a row. I think about there was an American football team, Darren, and they, back in the mid-90s, they won the whole championship, right? And they won it 2 years in a row. And then it came up to a vote where the city had to decide whether or not they were going to build a new stadium. Now, this was great timing for the team because the city had to vote to put a tax in, basically, to build a stadium, or at least a large chunk of the money would come from the community. And they had this tax that had to be approved. Well, because everyone was so happy with the team because they had won the championship 2 years in a row, the tax passed with flying colors, and it wasn't even close. Everyone voted it in, and they built the brand new shiny stadium. Well, if that had happened at any other time, I suppose that might not have been. In fact, if they had put the vote now, it might not happen. So I guess that's kind of the same effect that we see with trading, where sometimes we get caught up in the recency and in the recent effects and what's happened to my trading recently. It's the same reason why people don't want to go to a certain beach because there was a shark attack there last weekend or whatever. They think, oh, there's a shark out there and he's going to bite me or whatever. So that's one thing I think that also leads to that. And I wonder about, you know, just looking around, like socially, you see other traders or other people doing something, you think, well, everyone else is buying silver, maybe I should be buying silver now too. Or, you know, those sorts of things I suppose could play into it, where you know you shouldn't be doing that because it doesn't fit with your system, but because everyone else is doing it, maybe you feel like it's the right thing to do. Everyone else is making money on this stock or this currency or this CFD or whatever it is. That could also come into play.
I think people have too much information as well, you know, too much information to decide when to enter and too much information to decide when to exit. And, you know, it's hard to deal with all that information. You know, it's like if you ask people like a simple math question whilst they're walking along, they struggle with it, don't they? They have to sort of stop walking so that they can engage their rational thought and make a good decision. And I just don't think we have too much confidence in our ability to kind of look at a lot of things and make a judgment call and do it repeatedly throughout the day. And I put a new little simple trend trading system on the forum this week. It'd be interesting to see if people, suggest adding stuff to that to improve the win rate. And we have this belief that if we've got this more information, then that somehow is going to affect the outcome. And really all it's doing is bringing more human error into play.
Yeah, that's right. So we need to we need to reinforce this car with more steel, so next time it doesn't crumple when it hits a boulder or something like that. It's sort of this idea that we can make it better and we can keep adding things, and that'll do it, right?
Yeah, and maybe some people are better at executing than others. I know when I watch your webinars and I see you talking about your thought process and your process for entry, to me that I would really struggle to trade that way. But you seem to it seems to work for you, and that might just be that analysis gives you the confidence to execute, whereas for me it would kind of work in the other way. So I think you kind of really need to know your own personality as well, and develop an entry system that you feel comfortable with, and then you'll find it easier to execute that system, rather than trying to enter the way someone else does, because you feel that that in itself is the particular edge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think in the end, that's what you have to do. You have to find sort of your groove, what makes sense to you, and just do it. And I think when you first start out, there's a real temptation to bend your ear and change your approach because someone else who has more experience is telling you this is the way that you should do it. And I think, although that seems like that's the right thing to do, I think for a lot of traders, it's not, because in the end, you won't be doing that. You won't trade like, if Darren says do this, and you think, well, it doesn't, maybe I'll try that because Darren says it. Or, I say, well, why don't you try this because this makes sense. What we're saying really makes sense to us. And so when you try and adapt too much and bend too much toward the way that someone else trades, I think that's not necessarily a good thing. It just means that later on you're going to have to make the adjustment to go back to where you are and what you believe in. So I think for the people listening to this, if you really want to do well at this for a long time, you have to kind of settle in on what you believe in and trade that way. It doesn't mean that you can't pick and choose and go through the buffet and find out how you're going to build your system and how you're going to build your approach. That's great to do that, to try different things and taste different things, see if this is going to work or if this jives with the way you see the markets. But in the end, if you bend too much, if you really try to become a little Darren or a little Walter or whatever, whoever you listen to, I think that's the wrong choice. And I think eventually you'll come to that. But hopefully, from the get-go, you can become aware of the fact that we all trade our beliefs. Everyone, every single person in the market is trading their beliefs. And so if you believe something strongly, that's going to come out in the way that you engage with the market. And so I think you should just acknowledge that up front from the beginning. And be deliberate about it and make sure that you're aware of why. Why are you using that trailing exit? So you believe in the extreme volatility of the markets, and you believe that the markets are going to go really far occasionally, much further than they should or that they would be expected to, and you want to take advantage of that with a trailing exit. Okay, that makes sense. So these are the sorts of things I suppose that I would say you need to focus in on as a trader, and that's going to do a lot for you over the long haul. So you're not always changing and redefining yourself.
I think another good technique that I heard as well was when you've had a particularly bad loss or a run of losses, then gut instinct is to try and get rid of that bad feeling by acting it out and trading it out. So we kind of want to replace that bad feeling with a good feeling. And the technique I heard was that when you take a loss or a string of losses, you should learn to just sit back and feel bad about it and allow yourself to feel bad about it. Whereas, what you tend to do is try and get rid of it and try and replace it and remove that feeling. And if you allow yourself to just accept you feel bad and feel bad about it, then you're less likely to then make a mistake with your next trade.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard that in the United States, for example, there's about 40% of the people are clinically depressed. And the reason I bring this up, of course, is because it is related to what you just said, despite what you're probably thinking right now. But the reason why I bring it up is because, I was listening to an expert. He basically was saying, you know what? It's actually okay for people to, it's a natural part of life to sort of, maybe not go outside as much and sort of retract from the environment and feel bad and sort of become really introspective and be sad and go through these periods. It's not good if it's prolonged, right? And that you do it for, 12 years or a full lunar cycle or whatever, that sort of thing isn't necessarily a good idea, but it is a natural part of being alive. And so that's something to take into consideration, because as a trader, you're going to have those highs and lows. And some people are going to tell you that you need to sit there and doesn't matter if you're up 2,000 pips this week or down 2,000 pips this week. You have to be that robot and just keep, and that's not necessarily true. Maybe you can celebrate the wins, and maybe you should feel bad about the losses and kind of let it go. And I think that's really an interesting piece of advice that you've offered, because I think it makes a whole lot of sense that we would normally go through these things, and that we should allow ourselves to feel those things. I think that it also works, Darren, with that moment when you get into a trade, or you've decided you're going to take a trade and you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no feedback from the market, but you're in the trade, or you're just about to execute the trade. I think embracing that feeling of the unknown is really a good idea, kind of like what you're saying with embracing the feeling of the loss. I think it's really good to do that, to get comfortable with this idea that I don't know what's going to happen, and that kind of makes me feel alive, not knowing what's going to happen. It doesn't mean I'm a gambler. It doesn't mean I'm crazy. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means that I'm alive, and what's happening right now is the unknown. Who knows what's going to happen with this trade? And this is all part of trading. So I think that that's really good advice, and I appreciate that you shared that with the listeners, because I think that's something that we should probably do more often, instead of trying to jump back in and get revenge or whatever.
Because as soon as you enter a trade, you're instantly in this mindset that this is a winner, this is going to go to my target, it's probably going to blow right through my target and give me 4R instead of 2R, and you automatically go into that mindset, and you're kind of doing that at all stages of your trading. And this is why you need to kind of tune into your feelings and examine them and ask yourself, why are you feeling like that? And what is the reality of that feeling? And and so then when the unexpected happens, you're already sort of tuned into that uncertainty, and again you're less likely then to go on and make human error. And we talked about this in the previous podcast. If you could just reduce half of your mistakes out of your trading, it can make a dramatic difference to your bottom line. And you should, in your journaling, be making notes of how many mistakes you make, and you should see as you progress and become more experienced as a trader, you should see those human errors reduce. And we all go through it at the start, and it does seem to sort of stay longer than it should, and it does feel like you're never going to be able to get over it and stop making these mistakes. But with the simple techniques, and just being aware of why you're thinking the way you are, and why you're making the decisions and acting them out in the way you are, then you can progress really quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you really highlighted the important piece of this, Darren, which is when you take that trade and then something happens and you're asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? And I think this is one of those critical pieces of trading. this is that one of those puzzle pieces that come with experience that I get it now. Focusing on why am I feeling that way? Why do I, for example, why must I feel like I am a winner? Why do I have to have a high win rate? Why must I end the week on a positive note? Why must I close my trades out before I go to sleep? These questions, when you're asking yourself why, I think that's an important piece. And one of the things that we have to do as traders is we have to decide, are we going to be the type of trader who really wants to win all the time and probably win rather small, or are we the type of trader that's okay losing a bit more but winning really big when we do win? And so these are the sorts of things I think that you need to ask and really critically examine these. I think why is one of those really important questions for traders. So in the end, I suppose, Darren, when it comes to execution, it's important to know what your goals are, know who you are as a trader, know what your approach is, and understand that your interaction with the market is likely to give you highs and lows, and that's not necessarily something that you should fight against. It really comes down to learning about yourself, learning from your experience with the market, and trying to execute as best you can. We're all going to make mistakes, but I think if you keep a good record of those, that's going to help you also to identify some of these reasons why maybe you keep falling into the same pattern. So, for example, like you say, if you have a journal and you follow in your journal, you take time. I mean, one of the things that's nice about journaling is that it helps you clarify your thoughts. But the other thing is now you have a record and you can go back and look at, okay, 18 months ago, I noticed that every time I felt flustered or if I didn't feel like I had enough time because I was racing through things, I tended to make mistakes with my trading or whatever it is. These are the sorts of things that your journal can highlight for you if you are very vigilant and you are very religious about using your journal. So when it comes to execution, I think it's not just about the execution. It's also about understanding who you are and how you relate to the markets as well.
Yeah, and behind any of those actions where you try and execute your strategy, there's going to be an emotion behind it. You're going to be using, whether you're sticking to your plan or not, there's always going to be an emotion attached to those actions. And so if you study that side of trading psychology and the emotions, then you're much more likely to execute your trading plan effectively.
Yep, exactly. And I have one more question for you, Darren. Did you journal back when you first started trading, or is that something that you've been doing? Like, I guess my question is, were you journaling as a trader when you were not consistently making money?
No, I wasn't, and I kind of journaled by accident, and I didn't necessarily. It wasn't my intention to be journaling my trades to improve, but what I was doing actually was I was writing threads on forums, and that was then something that I could refer back to and look at what I was thinking and what I was saying and what I believed in then. And then, as I improved, I could look back and see where the mistakes were that I was making. So, by just starting a strategy thread on a forum, was in effect my journal, and I was writing my feelings and my experiences is down.
Right, so that's how you came upon it. I didn't know that. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, because I'm lazy. I'm really lazy. I'm the world's laziest trader, and it is definitely a case of do what I say, not what I do. Because I know now I could have improved much quicker if I'd taken some of my own advice.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Cool. Well, thanks for the session, Darren. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Walter. Cheerio.